So you're looking at an application for a credit card, and I'd like to take you into the upper corner showing you the rate of interest. If one applies for this particular credit card, you could have as high as 25% interest rate imposed upon you, maybe as low as 14%. And again, the catch is based on your credit worthiness. Based on your credit worthiness. So where does this lead me? Well, it leads you to the Bible, of course. Where else? But the Holy Word of God. Now there's a sin that God doesn't like. He doesn't like any sin. But this sin is not good in God's eyes. No sin is good in God's eyes, but what I'm trying to say is this is really terrible as far as God is concerned. And that is when somebody is in need of money for whatever reason and goes to a lender. And the lender says, sure, you can have some money, but you will be charged an interest rate for receiving that money. And as you pay it back, you pay back the principal plus interest. So, if we go to the Holy Word of God, the word is usury. And it comes from the idea of using money to get interest. And we'll go to a couple of places where usury was imposed on the people. And where was it imposed? It was imposed in the day of Nehemiah. The exiles had just come back to their land. They were in captivity for about 70 years. And when they came back, they wanted to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. And when the people came back, they were poor, very poor. But they were good workers, and they wanted to work on the wall, and they wanted to work on the temple. And they were in need of food, they were in need of supplies. And so they had to borrow money in order to be a good worker on the wall or the temple. And they borrowed money from money lenders. And Nehemiah 5:10, and likewise I, my brothers and my servants, are lending them money and gain. Please, let us leave of this usury. Begging with the rich Jewish community to just lend money, don't charge interest. Again in Nehemiah 5:7, I consulted with myself and contended with the nobles and the rulers and said to them, you are extracting usury, each from his brother. Therefore I held a great assembly against them. So Nehemiah does not want to tolerate this whole idea of poor people in need of funding so they can work on the wall and later work on the temple. They're good workers. And there's a rich community that wants to take advantage of them by issuing them money and then charging them a very high rate of return payment. And of course, Nehemiah is just beside himself. Now, what about you? What about the current world? What about this trap of people buying things on credit? Now, trust me, I've been through this. I've been through this. And I want to tell you right now, I'm never going through it again. Oh, I know everybody's about, oh, you have to build your credit rating. I understand that. But maybe instead of building a credit rating, people should try to build up a savings account. So when they want to buy something, they have the resources to buy it. And if they don't have the resources to buy it, they probably shouldn't buy it. Now I can tell you story after story. I'll tell you a story of one young lady. She was at the place where I got my car worked on and got to talk to her, and she was maybe about 25 years of age, single young lady, and she was regretting that she got suckered into buying a brand new car. And she said basically almost her entire paycheck had to go to pay for that car. Now, I had a cousin that could only afford to live in a trailer, but they decided to buy a house. And they really didn't have the resources to buy the house, but they bought it anyhow. And they kept paying the house payment on credit cards until eventually their credit cards were so high and their debt was so high and they couldn't pay their mortgage anymore. So guess what? The bankers took it. She ended up living in a very small little, it was like a hunting lodge camp only meant for hunters in the winter. It was all they could afford. They were suckered because of what? Usury, the high rate of interest. The sin of usury. And people just go along with it. And almost everyone lives their lifestyle on the basis of credit and paying off debt. So I've been through it, but I never want to go through it again, ever. What am I trying to say? That's always a good question. First of all, the people that do this to us are sinning greatly. Greatly. Those interest rates that I showed you, if you want that credit card, the minimum of 14%, most likely it's going to be up near 25%. And it's no different when one buys a car. It's no different when one buys a house. So the sin is put on us. Now, what can you do about it? Well, guard your thinking. Live a little more of a humble lifestyle. And by that I mean, if you can't afford it, then don't go out and purchase it on credit. If you don't have it, otherwise you spend your entire life paying off debts and then never, maybe never getting out of debt. Never. And that's what these usurers want to do to you and to me. To make us slaves to debt. So that there's nothing else we can do except get up, go to work, so we can pay off a huge debt on something that we purchased that probably we maybe should have never purchased at all. Now, I'm only saying this to you after having gone through it in my life. And I'm at a point in life now where I don't have to go through it anymore. And I thank God for that. But if you're younger and you're listening to this, think about this. If you don't have it, meaning the money, then why are you buying it? Why? The young lady that was in my story, she could have bought a used car. And basically speaking, that's what I've had my entire life. But as a young lady, and she had her own paycheck, she thought she'd be all right. But she told me of the great regret that she had made this decision. Why? Because of the usury, the great sin that's out there of lending money to people and expecting a high rate of return of interest. So don't fall into the money trap, which is based on a credit debt system. And I will try to maybe explain to you a little bit later in another video that the credit debt system is basically from ancient Babylon. And that's what's been imposed upon Americans. An ancient Babylonian evil system that entices people to buy things that they maybe should never buy and get them in debt for the rest of their life. Now, if that's your scenario, the only thing I can say is you have to try to work on getting out of debt. Then after you get out of debt, you make a choice to no longer go into debt. And I did that years ago. And I'm glad I did. Because now I have peace. The users have no power over me in my life at this time. So you may be wondering a little bit about my age, and most of you that listen to me probably are very close in proximity to my age, but I am at an age where I could retire and let go of work completely, but I'm not doing so for a number of reasons. But anyhow, this advice goes out to anyone, regardless of age. And most likely many of you that are listening to me are in an older bracket, not the younger bracket. My statistics seem to indicate that on my other 9 channels. But I do wish to thank you for listening, and I do wish to thank you for joining in on this video, and I do wish to thank you for coming to this channel. And I'm going to try to keep everything on this channel biblical, to the praise and glory of Jesus Christ, the one who came to set us free. End of video.